convinced about that. Now, what is it that is standing on the way of unity in this movement? I have looked at the resolutions of the fourth conclave, and I've come to the conclusion that the seeds of discord are actually found right in those resolutions. I've come to the conclusion that a lot of the happenings at the fourth conclave have confused this movement for our freedom. It is not like people feel that the leadership of Comrade Sisiku Ayuk Tabe should be contested at all costs. No. I think that there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. The people who sat in Zaria to discuss and determine what we are now living with as our interim government appear to have forgotten a good lot of things. Because the questions that have come to me daily, Comrade John, you are close to the interim government. Comrade John, we even think that maybe your name is one of the XXX. I don't know where that's coming from. Comrade John, can you tell us who is our interim president answerable to? I've called at least 70 to 80% of the delegates who were at the conclave. Nobody is able to answer to this question. The next question, Comrade John, who is the vice president? I've called 70 to 80% of those who are members of this cabinet. None of them is aware of the name of who our interim vice president is. Now I ask this stupid question, and none of us can wish it. What if by any chance something happens to our interim president today? What will become of the movement tomorrow? Who takes over? There is going to be a problem, because everyone needs to know who our interim president is, because the people of the cabinet will begin fighting among themselves, and we shall take ourselves back to square zero where we were not really supposed to be. An important position like the interim vice president can never carry XXX. And even saying ground zero is nobody's name. Bringing an interim president to be on ground zero means we're already picking somebody who will never be active, who will never be known, who will never say anything, which is erroneous. It's a very, very big mistake that I think needs to be corrected. We have said throughout this revolution that we are running away from a country where the only institution that is functioning is the President of the Republic. But when you look at our interim government now, I'm sure all of us come to the clear conclusion that the only functional institution is the interim president. Who is he answerable to? The interim president is supposed to be answerable to what I see supposedly in this constitution to be the Revolutionary Council. So who had to come in place before who? The Revolutionary Council ought to come in place before the interim president. Do we expect the interim president to turn out tomorrow, as is being raised, and handpick people to belong to the Revolutionary Council, and they have the guts to call him to order? It's impossible. Who vetted the appointments by the interim president? These are questions we need to ask ourselves. It is not Anglo-Saxon to promote a dictatorship. I am not calling our interim president a dictator, but I am saying the circumstances of putting him in place, the circumstances of putting his institution in place will give him the leverage to become a dictator, even if he didn't want to be one. Temptation, the Bible says, is not good. We should not tempt. By doing what we are doing at this point in time, we are opening our interim president to temptation. And there are so many questions that are being asked which appear never to have been answered in Zaria. Article 34 of the resolutions that came out of Zaria is heavily contested. Even if Mr. Interim President, you have not been told, it is absolutely contested, because I have spoken to 90% of those who actually attended that conclave, and they all say when they had finished validating the resolutions, there were 33 resolutions. They only saw the 34th resolution when the resolutions were published. So which means that the dissolution of SCACOV was never decided at the conclave in Zaria. And the leaders of the various movements that made up SCACOV are contesting this very bitterly, including even those who attended that conclave. Mr. Interim President, there's an issue that needs to be resolved. Because it is even, first of all, let me borrow a French word, maladroit, for leaders of the frontline movement to sit together in a whole conclave for days on end to create a movement. And at the end of the day, they bring country heads who never were there in conclave 1, nor conclave 2, nor conclave 3 to come at conclave 4 to pronounce the dissolution of such. And now, what does the dissolution of SCACOV mean? It means that the frontline movement are free now to start operating again as movements that they were, raising their funds and doing their own thing and setting their own agendas. That is going back to the disunity. Or we are now saying that those movements have been transformed into political parties. These are questions that need to be answered. And again, yet another issue that is creating a lot of trouble, Mr. Interim President, is the issue of the severing of relationships with SCAPAC. Mr. Interim President, you are aware that SCACOF built a link with SCAPAC and used SCAPAC, actually SCACOF sponsored the creation of SCAPAC and used SCAPAC to sign an agreement, a contract with the Foleyhawk law firm to help us in the diplomatic arena. Now, when the interim government severs relations with SCAPAC, what is the new role of SCAPAC? Is SCAPAC now free to raise its own funds in order to continue to fund the relationship that exists between the people of South